podcast. We are officially live here on the Book of Faces. Steve Ploetz has joined me again. It is great to have you here, Steve. And market volatility today, something to discuss.
Yes.
For sure. Talk about potentially pulling the trigger on the stock market, something I know I made moves earlier this week. And also, do I really need to pay 6% to sell my house? So we see the Dow was down over 1,000 points again today.
Yes.
You know, in your mind, what's the first thing that goes through your mind when you see, okay, Dow's down 1,000 points? It was down 1,000 points earlier this week on a single day as well.
Yes, and I think that it's twofold. One is I always tend to look at these as opportunities in terms of, is it something that you can get out of? Is it, hey. I always look at them as opportunities and recognizing, is this a way that you are so ridiculous that you've just walked away and then switched cameras? I know you're not feeling well. Give me that piece of toilet paper and I'll throw it at him as he runs out the door. I'm so proud of you.
Hi, Lexi.
I am so proud of you. So,
I just want to see what you would do.
You are awesome. I tried to keep going, but recognizing the cameras were moving. So
Dow's down 1,000.
Dow's down 1,000. As we talked about before the segment started here, I was actually on the phone with my financial advisor. And so every year I do a profit sharing and those different kinds of things. I think it's a good opportunity to get into the market, just because it's so significantly down. But there is a lot of there's a lot that points to good. Yes, recently we've had this newest discussion about inflation, which has some people concerned. But GDP, production, employment, those factors are all strong. It's money that I'm going to invest anyways. You and I are in the demographic that we're not retiring in the next 5 or 10 years anyways. There's going to be a cycle. The big thing that I have preached in real estate particularly is the idea of buy and hold. And so what I'm talking about is this is a great opportunity to buy and hold. Why not jump into the market when it has just corrected? Is it possible that it'll correct some more? Yes. But there will be a day in my lifetime and yours where it will reach a new high. So I'd rather purchase now when it's just dropped 10% off of that new high.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. We had the first 1,000 down day, which I believe was Friday, right? Because we were going to the weekend, and then we had another big down day on Monday, and then we recovered on Tuesday. I believe is how it went. I went and put in orders. I put in limit orders that were effectively market orders because I was putting in a limit price that was probably going to open way below that, so it was effectively a market order. But yeah, I bought for my retirement account and for my daughter's trust account, and it worked out really well. Even down today, we're still up from those areas in the S&P. I buy the S&P, not the Dow.
Right. And you and I aren't looking to make money in the next 2 weeks, 2 months. We're looking long term. Your daughter, you're looking long term.
Yeah.
Your retirement, you're looking long term.
Dollar cost averaging.
Yeah.
Trying to pick good. You want to buy low and sell high, obviously. And I'm not selling anytime soon.
Right.
But I've definitely been on the sidelines for too much of the rally and looking for opportunities to get in there. So I think it is. I think it's definitely an opportunity. However, there's still probably some more downside possible.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not pretending that it's not important to me to buy at the absolute bottom. It's important to me to jump into the market when, in my opinion, and I'm no expert, but in my opinion, when it's favorable. Right now, it's favorable.
Okay. Fair enough. I'll be right in there alongside you buying.
Yeah, either we're both experts or we're both big idiots. We're going to find out.
Well, I think stocks have a really good opportunity to go higher here for at least the next year or two, just based on tax reform alone. So if you look at the corporate tax cuts and the Trump tax plan and what that has done is just made it's basically cut taxes for corporations in a tremendous way. And corporations don't just include big corporations. Obviously, it does include them, but it's not just them. It's also like someone like me who has an S corporation, or someone like you who might be.
I'm an S corp as well.
An S corp. Okay, so so we both get those same benefits. Right. So it's not just big corporations, but because those big corporations do get tax benefits as a result of the new tax plan, and that's going to last for 10 years.
Right.
I think that gives the market a little bit of extra leg room. Now, what we've seen is we've seen interest rates go up a little bit. That's been the problem. Typically, interest rates are a little bit more of the tail that's wagged by the stock market dog.
Right.
And that has flip-flopped here recently. Interest rates have gone up because of what's going on in other climates, not really because of what's happening in the stock market, but that has also fueled it now. But that didn't start happening in the stock market until you started seeing bonds and coupon rates go higher. So it's really weird. You know, it's just that thing with Wall Street and with investments, and you know, nothing is ever always the same. You can't be like, oh, well, this does this, and that means this, and that. If that happens, then this
A
happens.
equals B and B equals C.
Just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So what we're seeing right now is interesting. Now, in the real estate space, and what we're going to discuss today is, you know, there's a lot of options, and this happens when the market is really really good. Like Redfin, for example.
Yeah.
They will sell your home for, I think it's, is it 4.5 or 3.5?
I think it's 3.5, and so as some basic understanding, so just so that that we're all on the same playing field, a commission typically, whether when you hear a 5% commission or a 6% commission, that person is paying both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. And so with Redfin, the reduction that they're doing, of course, and we'll get into it more, is a reduction on the listing side of that. So I'll go into the full spiel here.
Okay,
good. And let's start at the beginning. So first of all, a full commission is split between buyer's agent and seller's agent, and the seller pays it. So if I'm the seller, I'm going to pay a commission to my own agent, and I'm going to pay a commission also to the buyer's agent. What's happening in the market is that the typical realtor sells less than one home a year, and so what's standard in the industry is an offering of 2.5% at least. And then sometimes there's incentives of 3% or 3.5%, which is this carrot to these buyer's agents as, bring your buyer to our house, here's the carrot. When agents sell so few houses, unfortunately, that plays into which homes they show, which homes they are advocates for. Certainly there's a lot of information that's online, and buyers are able to say, hey, I want to look at houses 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and please show them to me. But you, as a buyer, you've still hired somebody to be your representative and get their opinions on some things. And as much as I wish that an agent would always say, this is the best house, whether it's paying them $1 or $100,000, the money will play into it. So then inevitably what happens, the Redfin model as we're talking about here, what inevitably happens is that the seller pays their own agent less than they pay the buyer's agent. And so what I don't like about it is, let's imagine that we're married and it hasn't worked out. And we're getting a divorce.
Okay.
And I am paying the attorneys, both of them. And I'm paying your attorney 2.5 times my attorney. Certainly there are real estate transactions that are far less oppositional than a divorce situation, but sometimes there are.
Well, I don't see how it could be more oppositional. And you both want the exact opposite things.
Sometimes.
Right? I mean, a buyer wants the lowest price, the seller wants the highest price.
Yes, and sometimes they align. Sometimes you're very far apart, sometimes you're close. I don't think that every transaction, I don't want to give the impression that every real estate transaction is an absolutely gut-wrenching war. It's not. But there are some.
But your desires are opposite.
I agree. You're not aligned.
Your interests are completely unaligned.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Well, here's where they're aligned. In the end, most sellers want to sell a place, and most buyers want to buy a place. And once you're in escrow, everybody is more likely to see it through. Most buyers and sellers don't want to start all over.
Okay.
But I hear what you're saying. In the general picture, a buyer wants the lowest possible price, the seller wants the highest possible price.
Yeah.
In a seller's market where there's less inventory, which is certainly something that we'll discuss, maybe a buyer feels like, well, there isn't as much that's out there that I like. But I don't like the setup.
So the setup is, you think it's unfair to pay or bad business.
Yeah, I don't think it's unfair. Everything is it's bad. It's bad business because it sets up the relationship incorrectly, in my opinion. If I'm the seller, I've got the product. I've got the item that you want to purchase, and what I'm saying is the guy that I'm or girl that I have as my advocate is making far less than the person that is bringing me a buyer. Here's what, in my opinion, I think happens.
How is that a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
Number one is median house in San Diego County is $500,000, let's say.
Okay.
So 1%, so my agent is getting 1%, which is $5,000. That's real money. The problem is agent isn't getting $5,000. I keep pointing like the agent's standing over my shoulder. I guess that's what agents do.
Who is this freaking guy?
Who is it? The agent isn't getting that 1%. Their broker is getting that 1%. And so the broker takes $5,000, and then an agent has a split with them. And let's just say that the broker takes a 10% cut in all the different models. There's a franchise fee, there's all these different things. And we can talk about the different models that there are with different companies. Redfin's a little bit different in that some of the people are salaried. So now an agent's got $4,500. The problem is that the agent isn't incentivized to sell my home quickly, in my opinion. What they're incentivized to do is get more clients. They're incentivized to use my house as leverage to pick up more buyers, to pick up more sellers. And what I don't...
As a loss leader, almost. Like that listing becomes a loss leader to them, where it's like, okay, well, whether I sell this one or not doesn't really matter. What matters is, can I leverage it to do more?
Absolutely. I would say that most agents, there's a term which is discount brokerages, and I think that can bring a negative connotation. It's a different model. And so it's important to know the advantages and the disadvantages. But I think the biggest downside, in my opinion, is they need to work in quantity, they being discount brokers. In order to make a living, you gotta create a systematized McDonald's. That if I walk into Redfin in New Hampshire, or I walk into Redfin in San Jose, or I walk into Redfin in Austin, Texas, that it's McDonald's. That I know what I'm getting and I know what to expect. And my thing is, I'm like everybody else in the world, which is I think that my house is the best house in my neighborhood. And so if I'm going to sell my house, I don't want to list it with McDonald's. I want to, and this is just me personally, I want to list it with Bentley. I want to list it with Fleming's and Ruth's Chris. I want to list it, I want to get a product out there that I can stand behind and say, I've done everything I possibly can do to get the absolute best price possible. And as a homeowner, I would say what you need to do is that you need to weigh the costs. If Redfin is charging 3.5%, let's just say, 2.5% is being offered to the buyer's agent and they're taking 1%, and Steve Ploetz is charging 6%, there's a 2.5% difference. So if Steve Ploetz isn't doing anything except the same service, and I'm getting the same price, they're losing money with me. I need to show 2.5%, the difference there, of value. And more than just service, picking up my phone and responding to people, I need to get you a 2.5% higher price, or else it's a wash. Or else maybe you feel like the headache of dealing with a quote-unquote discount broker is worth it. So I think there's several pieces to it in that sense.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely multiple things to consider. I think a lot of people do see the cost element and they think kind of, well, it's going to be the same. The house is going to go on the MLS. It's going to be, on the web. That's all that really matters. That's where the buyers are going to come from.
Right.
And it's true that a lot of people see homes online.
There's so much information that's readily available online.
No question. The thing that I don't think people see or understand, because by the way, there is someone out there running around who will do it for even less than 3.5%.
Absolutely.
And people just kind of think, well, yeah, that's what it should cost. That's still a lot of money.
Right.
But here's what all you have to do. All you have to look at is this. Number one, Redfin, very interesting organization, very good company. A lot of really good people work at Redfin.
Absolutely.
But haven't made $1.
As
No
as a
profit.
company. Yeah.
No profit.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. Now,
But,
they have plenty of revenue.
Yeah.
No profit.
Right.
So when does something change? Something's got to give. They're publicly traded now. When you look at most discount brokerages, most of them close doors. Like they just don't survive.
When you think about, so I entered the industry in 2005. That was a similar market, a seller's market, high prices. We had iPay1. They're now the staple. They were the iPay1 center where the Lakers played. iPay1 is out of business. There was Help You Sell. I don't know if they're out of business or not, but they certainly don't have the market share that they had in the past. There was a lot of these discount brokerages. And when you think about the traditional brokerages, the Century 21s, Coldwell Bankers, Remaxes, Prudential that became Berkshire Hathaway, they're still here in high markets and low markets. And so to interrupt your train of thought, which I'm really good at,
I know.
I would say, you got to just jump in if you want to interrupt me. Good luck. I would say if these companies, if the discount brokerages were truly offering everything the same at a discounted price, if a steak was $60 at some place and I could get the same exact steak for $30 elsewhere, the $60 company would go out of business.
Not the other way around.
Not the other way around. If literally the service was exactly the same, and people would say, well, hell, I can save 2.5%. I don't need to do it for 6%. I can do it at 3.5%, and I'm getting everything that's exactly the same, or a headache that I'm comfortable dealing with. All the big companies would be out of business.
Right. It's kind of the opposite of what we've seen. Obviously, we're live right now on Facebook, so drop us a comment and say what's up. We can interact with you live right here. What's up, Lexi, James, Don? How y'all doing? I agree the topic is timely. Higher rates coming. 8 out of the last 9 business days, I'm not sure about today, but 8 of the last 9 business days, interest rates went up. And so mortgage rates.
Yes.
So that's definitely something that's for real that's happening right now. I agree 100%. This is definitely a timely discussion. Luxury buyers will have less to buy. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, the luxury buyers, you never really know. Sometimes those guys have their money in the stock market. Sometimes they have it in all sorts of weird shit, businesses, and
Right.
like you never know where the luxury buyers have their money buried. But a lot of times it's in stuff that you wouldn't expect, and rarely is it in the stock market. If it's in the stock market, it's usually with a hedge fund or hedge fund manager, and typically, if that's the case, they're doing all sorts of things besides just buying the S&P like you and me.
Well, and just so you know, I've had a couple of clients too reach out to me in the last week that have said, hey, we're getting ready to list our home with the stock market correction. Does that work in our favor? Which is, are buyers now looking for something more tangible if they've just lost 10% of their portfolio?
Possibly.
Is it possible? And I don't have the answer on that. I think long-term markets tend to be similar in the way that they respond. But short-term, there is always this gut reaction. In the same way that a jump in interest rates, in my opinion, what happens is buyers kind of have let's see what happens, and then a week later they get comfortable again with the new market or whatever it is, and then they're back in. But there's always the initial pullback, whether it's stock market or interest rates or the real estate market as a whole.
A little bit of fear, basically, is what comes up. So if I can try to go back to my original train of thought before Steve interrupted me. Let's do okay. Question from Don. What's up, Don? He says, what specifically do you do to warrant 2.5% more? I agree with you, by the way. Just put some teeth in your premise. So, and I think that is where I was headed. Was what is the value? And so first and foremost, when you look at just the fact that most of these companies do go out of business. Mm-hmm. So the discount brokerages, we're calling it that.
Right.
I don't want it to have a negative connotation, but it kind of does. And I hate calling Redfin a discount brokerage because I do believe in their technology is really amazing. I think it's a great company. But the bottom line is that when you become a discount player in this game, it becomes more about quantity than quality.
Right.
It has to. In fact, I know some guys who started a discount brokerage up in San Francisco area. Yeah. And they are trying to expand down here and stuff like that. And I've talked to them at length about marketing. They want me to do their marketing. And they're like, yeah, it's in our business, we need volume. We need tons
Right.
of transactions. We have to build it into a huge business or it doesn't make sense.
Right.
You can't make money. So that's where I think the value is the difference between, and Steve's mentioned it as it's like the headache of dealing with a discount broker, meaning that, okay, well, your number on a chalkboard, like, and that's all that you can possibly be, because there's no way that they can take that small amount of money and stretch it out to, a great human being service throughout the whole process. It's just really, really difficult to try to pull that off. There are a lot of things that are involved in, the sale of a home that cost money.
Right.
There's risk involved.
Right.
Not all deals close. In fact, I think it was over 30% of listings in general that went on the market expired without being sold.
Right.
Now that's just the first time. Some of them will be relisted and then sell.
Right.
But I think it was even high 30% in San Diego County went expired without selling.
Right.
So that means photos, marketing dollars, a lot of stuff's been spent by the agent with no money returned, and they have to go back to square one. So that's the thing you don't see, and that's the thing that churns away at the discount model, is the ones that don't work.
Right.
If they all sold perfectly,
Absolutely.
then those discount models would work and make sense. But because you have that 20 to 40% that don't go
Right.
perfectly and sell the first time and all that stuff, where you have to redo things, remarket, retake photos or whatever, or maybe even change things to the home, like, hey, it didn't sell, the seller has to get this price, or we got to do something different. That's the part you don't see, and that's the part that eats away at the business
And I
model.
would say, so what ends up happening is if an agent is making, in our example, $500,000 house, and they've got $4,500, and then we end up in a situation where they also need to pay their own marketing, all these kinds of things. Of course, they have to pay employer and employee tax. What ends up happening is that most discount brokers, agents, don't advertise because they have concerns that they're not making any money on it anyways. Not that they're not making any money on it anyways, but that the more that they dip into their own pocket, the more it hurts their margins. They need to have 20 listings in order to make a living doing it. That's the benefit, and one of many, in my opinion, of a traditional brokerage, is that I mentioned before about the way that it's set up with a discount broker is that they want your home to sell. You like always and never, so I'll make sweeping generalizations here on the show. They want your home to sell in like 30 to 60 days, so it gives them enough time to market it, to leverage it, to find more buyers, to do all those kinds of things. They're not making money on the sale of your house. They're making money on the people that they find that then they can go and take to another house and get paid a normal 2.5%. My goal as an agent is to sell it for as quickly as possible. To exceed expectations is something that's so overused, but my source of business is the seller. That I want them to be totally wowed by how it went and the process and how smooth it is, that then and the great dollar amount that they got, that then they're my advocate. I don't need to use their house to my benefit. I want them to be totally wowed, and then they become a great source of business.
More of an alignment of interest. I know what you mean. Is it the discount brokerage I was telling you about in San Francisco? That was one of the things that they were saying. Like, yeah, we're not gonna, we make money by finding the buyer.
Absolutely.
We take the listing, we want to double end it, or we want to, that person who's selling their home, they're buying another home, we're going to make our 2.5 there. So that was a lot of where their business model was quantity, and then the other side. So if that's where your profit is, and we know that without question, compensation drives behavior, it just does, especially in business,
right. Then
where is their attention? And so are they paying close attention to you and what you're doing, or are they not? Now, anyone at any given time can go and have a great experience with a Redfin.
Absolutely.
That totally happens. In fact, they have a lot of, great reviews on their website. You can read all the reviews on the Redfin website. So I'm not saying it's impossible. What I'm saying is that over the course of a lot of transactions, and we got to remember, these aren't just transactions, these are people, families who are making a huge move. Will you have instances where things don't work out as well as they could have? Of course you will. So the real question is, which delta is greater,
Right.
and does it cover that additional
And
cost?
what are the risks that are involved? And what I have found is that I've sat in numerous listing presentations where somebody has listed with a discount broker, it hasn't sold for a period of time, 60, 90 days, whatever their contract may be, and then they come off the market. I actually just had one sell where they were listed for 6 months with a discount broker, and they never sold it, couldn't get it to sell. We staged it and did some things, charged a full commission, came back on the market at the same price, and it sold slightly over asking price. But in that experience, they lose 6 months of their time. They get the headache. And these days, because there is so much information that's readily available, as soon as you list your house, Zillow and Redfin and all these different sites, they keep track of that. So if you list it again with somebody else, the initial question that everybody's going to have is, it looks like you were listed before. What happened? That's such a critical time period. And the last thing that you want to do, in my opinion, is to just test it. Let's just take a photo with my iPhone and let's have a really high price and let's just see what happens. That still becomes market time. People will still see that the property was listed previously. So there is a couple questions here. Should we
jump in there?
Well, so there was one about what's the difference in the 2.5%. I don't know how specific you want me to get. It's hard for me to read this and to have a conversation with you. I've learned that I just need to hold my breath because I can only do a couple things at one time here. So if I hold my breath, then I can...
We'll get to questions. Let's do that. Let's get to questions just a second. If you're watching right now, you have a question or you want to chime into the conversation, go ahead and drop it in there. We'll come right back to it here in just a moment. I do want to touch on what you're saying there, though, in the lost time, because that's a really, really big deal right now. Obviously, we're live right now, so we'll answer your questions as they're coming in. Or if you have a comment or something you want to add to the discussion, please type it in now. The reason why that 6 months is important. A year ago, there was a certain situation, I won't go into details, but someone tried to list their home with somebody, it didn't work out, and then they listed it about a year later, and it sold really quick, and it sold for a much higher price because the market went up.
Right.
So they kind of got lucky, and I was able to help them mentally through that by saying, hey, listen, it was just a serendipity. It was, hey, it was great. You got an extra $30,000.
When you say they, you mean the seller or
yeah.
the agent?
You got an extra $30,000. You did have a headache. It didn't go the way you wanted it to, but look, you made an extra $2,500 a month.
Right.
To wait.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I think you got paid sufficiently for waiting.
Yeah.
Now, what if the home had sold for $100,000 less? So what I mean here is, when you're saying kick tires, toe in the water, what happens there? What's your risk? You're expanding your risk profile dramatically. I'm a big risk reward guy.
Right.
That's how I look at everything. Risk reward. I drive that way. That's why I drive like a grandpa. It makes almost no sense to rush around on the roads, because what's your reward? You get there 2.5 minutes sooner. What does that do for you? Nothing.
It makes you mentally feel good.
Nothing. It does
you get
nothing.
Adrenaline.
So the risk just doesn't make sense for the reward to drive like a maniac. So when you look at that, you go, oh, okay, 6 months, that could have cost you a fortune. Even if you sell it for the same price or even a little bit more, which is great. I'm glad you were able to do that time. But what if the market was way hotter when you originally listed it? Or what if the market just got soft? Because that happens.
Right.
You can have a 2 or 3 month window where the market just gets soft. That happens sometimes.
Right.
It could be a certain pocket. It's a little bit random in that regard. So what if you missed it, is my point. Or what if things just turn over and now you're in scramble mode? You're leaving yourself flapping the wind. So you don't want to put yourself in that kind of situation. Now, I'm not saying that is exactly what will happen if you use a discount broker.
Right.
Not saying that at all. But I am saying that if you half-ass market something that you're trying to sell, and then you wait until Mayday comes before you go, okay, now let's really do it.
Well, and to that I would say, we've talked before about that 2017 was riddled with fear in the market, is that buyers are giving away everything in order to get a property. There's multiple offers in most cases. Then they get into escrow and they've got this contingency period where they've got this fear like, did I overpay for it? If you test the market and just throw it out there, snap a picture with my iPhone, do it for $500 total, waste a month of your time. Not saying that it's always wasted time, but generally that can be wasted time. And then you relist it a year later. a buyer is going to look at it and say, well, wait a second, they tried to sell it at X last year. And all of my data shows that in this neighborhood, it's gone up such and such a price, but they were overpriced before. So now I'm going to make assumptions about today's value based on what they had it listed for last year and it didn't sell. And I see that all the time. Literally every single buyer, as we talked about.
Price reductions too.
Price reductions is the same thing.
Shows up.
It shows up, and buyers are afraid. To generalize buyers are afraid right now. They don't want to create the tip top of the market, and so inevitably, what they do is they try to find as much data as they can to support a lower price. And all you're doing as a seller by testing the market or putting your toe in the water is giving them additional data that supports their perception that the market is turning and that things are changing and that they should come in really low and aggressive. My feeling is, if I'm going to do something, tangent story here of 30 seconds. Tangent story is, we're having a problem with our kitchen. We had a leak and you had to get it all remediated and ripped out. I would rather hire somebody to design it and do it correctly once so that I know that the problem is solved, that we've got a nice kitchen, and I don't ever need to worry about it, than for me to cut corners and sub it all out myself and have all the headache. And I don't want to say cross my fingers and hope that I never have a problem, but there is an element of that. I'd rather just have it solved. And I'll pay fair market value and have it in order to have it solved and done correctly and the way that I like. And get a product that, and walk out of there with a happy experience. But that's just me.
I think you and a lot of other people. All right, Don Reedy says, spot on, now you're talking. Agree. Don Schmidt, great point. What's up, Don? James Smith says you could say that for any realtor broker.
James, do you remember what the comment was? It's probably something that he said. Maybe it was something that I said. You could say that for any realtor or broker?
Debbie says you get what you pay for. Yeah.
There was something about the difference.
Time is money. That's true, James.
Explain to us the difference in the 2.5% when I talked about 3.5 versus 6.
Yeah, and I mean that 2.5%. Let's say that's the difference, but
I'll give you the short version. As you drink water.
I'll take some water.
Do you need some local honey? We've got some local honey.
I do have some local honey.
That's back over there. I think that's an old wives' tale. I don't think that actually works, just so you know. But I hate to burst your honey bubble.
What are you talking about? Of course it works.
I have a listing right now that's coming up this weekend in San Alejo Hills. San Alejo is a community of San Marcos, family community. Schools are 9s and 10s. Gonna sell quickly. I'm paying to have the whole property staged, and I'm charging a full commission. And the reason that I'm doing it, and to stage it, I just got the bill yesterday. This is not to sound egotistical or, oh, how wonderful I am, but it's costing $7,000 to stage it. These people could probably list it with a discount broker, and it probably would sell. But my argument is that by me paying for the staging and charging a full commission, we're going to exceed that 2.5 times by a lot. And the 2.5, not the 2.5 times, the 2.5%, the difference between if they listed with somebody at 3.5% and listing with me at 6%, we're going to get way above that, because it's going to be the buyer that is going to buy that house is going to be owner occupied, and there is limited inventory. But when they walk into a fully staged house that's marketed, that has professional photos, that they're able to send to all their friends, not only are they going to be excited about it when they write the offer, and I suspect that we'll have multiple offers, but they're going to be excited about it when we're 7 days into the transaction and they're sending that link to their parents who are clicking through those photos. That excitement is so critical in this market. I mean, I would say in any market, but particularly right now. Just because, as we've talked about, last year I had more cancellations last year alone in cancellations of escrows than in the rest of my career combined. Because buyers give up everything to get into a house, and then they feel like, did I overpay? Am I not doing this correctly? That's the benefit, one of many, I would say.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the case, I think, when we're in a market where we've been straight up for so many years, where the buyers will at some point go, all right, what are we doing?
Right.
But if it's now, and so I know I like generalizations. Well, I like to take a stance. So Don says, okay.
Give me another one.
Referring to that comment about Redfin. Yeah. Any agent can provide an unfortunate outcome even if it's not their fault. Yeah, anything could happen in any situation. We're kind of talking about in general, both sides of the coin, what we've seen and experienced. Don says, great differentiator. How about another?
More than happy, but I know you're in the middle of a thought. I will, Don.
He would prefer to interrupt me, Don. But
so anyways, back to me.
James says, does Redfin stage? That's a good question.
That is a good question, and I can't speak intelligently about Redfin and their model, but the short version of what I know of their model is it's not, they have multiple people that are involved. And so the person that you list with, you're going to be speaking with a different person once the property is listed, once the property goes into escrow, doing paperwork. These are all going to be different people. And most of the people within Redfin are salaried. That commission goes to the Redfin Corporation or whoever. This is not gospel. This is, I'm an agent, not an expert on Redfin. However, what I don't like about it as an experience is that it creates a situation where I'm selling my home with you, but now all of a sudden I'm speaking with somebody else who's doing the negotiations and speaking with somebody else about going through paperwork and speaking with somebody else about preparations for moving. I like the idea that, back to my kitchen, if there's a problem, I got one person to call. If he's having a problem with one of his subs, I don't need to call out his subs. I can call him and say, Joe, what's the deal? I want this solved. That's the benefit. And again, different model.
You work with Joe the plumber as well?
His name actually isn't Joe. But Joe's a good name to use, especially for a contractor.
Just through that guy.
Yeah, the same guy that...
These guys. So, yeah, I don't remember my original thought. Call the mill. It's corporate. I mean, it's big box real estate. I mean, it's essentially what it is, and it will appeal to some people because they will be cost sensitive. It will work out. I think the biggest disadvantage I see as a consumer, home seller, home buyer to working with a Redfin is that although they do publish all their reviews, your review doesn't have a lot of weight because they're getting thousands of reviews a day. So if I go to Steve Ploetz Zillow review page. You might have 100 or 200 reviews maybe total, right, or something like that. So my one review could make a difference. You really need me to have a good experience. You need every single person you work with to have a good experience.
Absolutely.
It's essential because it makes up a big portion of your review base, which is where people are making decisions.
Because it's only me, I can only work with a certain number of clients at a time. I'm not interested in being a big mill. I don't want to work with 100 clients at a time because I'm not going to be able to provide 100 clients with the service that they deserve. So what it means is, once I get to about 8 or 10 clients, that's about all that I can handle in order to provide the service that I would want. And if I was going to pay a traditional commission, you can't just put me in a mill. So.
What's interesting about this too, and I just saw the Redfin billboard on the 163. What's interesting about this though is that they've been in San Diego for a while, and they have grown a lot in San Diego, but still less than 10%, way less than 10% market share. I think it's even less than 5%. But their goal is 10%. I know that from the early days. Their goal, their end-all goal is to have 10% of the San Diego market.
Yeah.
And that's what the best website and property search technology out there.
I tell my own clients
everything
to use that site because it's a fantastic site. Their technology is remarkable. I just don't think that the model, the business model, makes sense for most clients.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Take care of that cold. Yeah, thank you, Don. Appreciate that. It's not a cold, it's hay fever.
It's yellow fever. It's
yellow fever. It's hay fever. Yeah, bad allergies, man. It's been brutal. But this is a good conversation. And so to answer the ultimate question, do I really need to pay 6% to sell my house? No.
Absolutely you do not.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't need to, you can pay 0% to sell your house.
You could sell your house yourself.
You can sell your own home.
Right.
I know people who've done that multiple times. That's what they do.
Right.
Are they doing a great job of it? I don't really know, but that's what they want to do.
And if they get through it without a headache, and
It's always a headache, though.
it is always a headache. But my last thing that I will say, the reason that I work at what we call a traditional brokerage, Century 21, and certainly they're changing some things around to be more cutting edge because they're a company that's been around for a long time. What I like is if there's an issue, we can go to the mattresses because we have a whole legal department. There's a variety of different things. I saw somebody talk about the risk and the E&O in one of the questions that was posted there. That certainly is one of the big items. It's when things go wrong that you'll be glad that you have a traditional brokerage instead of selling it yourself and now having to go figure out, okay, I need to get a real estate attorney. How do I figure this out?
Yeah, FSBOs have kind of gone away. There's a couple of them lingering around out there. Usually it's because someone is at that break-even point where they can't hire an agent.
Or there's the perception that they can.
Or there's the perception that they wouldn't be able to do it and make it work.
Right.
And that's what forces them into the FSBO space. But we're not seeing that a ton. I think it's really the discount brokers, which always sort of thrive and try to come up in a good market.
Yeah.
Hey, these houses are selling themselves. Why would you let's pay someone else? So it's definitely a prevalent thing right now, and I think a timely discussion. But as I said, Redfin's specific goal was 10% market share. So that tells you you can have the best technology,
Right.
great website, you can have discount prices on both sides,
Right.
cash back and all that stuff, and your goal is just to get to 10%. So is it true that that's what people really want? Is what you're offering what people really want or not? That's the question. You can't assume.
Right.
As a company, I'll tell you this right now, make me the CEO of Redfin and watch what I can do with that place in 2 years. 2 years, watch what I can do. Because what's there, what's possible,
Oh, absolutely.
is incredible. But if you try to give people what you think they want without finding out exactly what they do want,
Yeah.
then you're making a mistake. And I think that's where they've screwed up, is they haven't really taken the right amount of time to find out what do people really want from their real estate experience. Because there's so much leaning on this discount
Right.
being the thing. And that's clearly is not it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, I don't know. Good luck to them. Thanks for everyone participating on this. Please share if you would like to make your friends smarter than everyone else. Steve Ploetz, great to have you, man. Amazing discussion.